And we are back. Welcome back to the King's Report, folks. Friday, November 24th, 2017. I'm your host, Hyung Sean Moon, Second King of Cheongguk, broadcasting live from the Cheongguk studios to all the kings and queens of the Kingdom of God. Today we have joining us Mr. Lemon from Australia. Let's go to Tim, the Agent Elder, for our guest's bio. Tim.
George Lemon is chairman of Monaro State Electorate Council and National Party and delegate to the NSW, National Party Central Council, and a member of the Nationals since 1984. He has held numerous executive positions in both the National Party and the Young National Party. Previously worked for a senator and state congressman. He represented Australia at the inaugural Religious Youth Service, RYS, in the Philippines in 1986. He's a member of the Australian Political Exchange Council delegation to the Philippines in 2006. He attended international conferences in Paris, Beijing, Seoul, Washington, and New York. He's chair and president of numerous community and soccer groups over numerous years. Company secretary, Gawad Kalingo Australia. That's the Philippine-based humanitarian group. That is his bio that I have.
Mr. Lemon, thank you so much for joining us. I have a couple cameras, so I may not be looking into this one particularly. But thank you so much for joining us. Is the National Party in Australia, would that be the Conservative Party? That's kind of like we have like the Republicans in the U.S.?
Yeah, we're aligned to the Republicans. We have two Conservative parties, the Liberal Party, but the National Party is mainly a regional and rural-based farming party. So it's evolved over this, but it was mainly set up by farmers. And we mainly represent areas in the country areas.
Wow, that's interesting. Or how just to get on that just for 1 second? How are the farms? Is there a Department of Agriculture that kind of is trying to get rid of small farms and trying to give everything a big agra? Making in America, for example, they're making cow manure illegal as fertilizer in California, saying that it has to be Department of Agriculture approved. And making it illegal, and so farmers have to buy soil and fertilizer from the Department of Agriculture instead of using their own cow manure, which humans have used for the last 6,000 years.
Yeah, I think farmers in Australia have the same red and green tape, as we call it. They're always under the gun, but farming is very much, we're a farming country. We make a lot of money out of wool and cattle, sheep. So, but the National Party's there to represent farmers, and I don't think we're under that same sort of environmental nonsense as you've got in America at the moment, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, it's really interesting because even up here in northeast Pennsylvania, we're in the northeastern region. But even up here, for example, farmers can't just sell raw milk, or they can't sell USD unapproved, unpasteurized, whatever, different products. And they used to be able to, set up a farm stand right on their property and be able to start a small business with no regulation. But now they're regulated out of existence. They have to get all their stuff sent through USD approved factories. Otherwise, they can't do business. And it cripples the local farms. On top of that, they're given all this regulation, and big agri-ton spends hundreds of millions of dollars lobbying Washington. It's just a literal hellhole that farmers have to go through in these United States.
Yeah, I think it's similar. It's been, as I said, very much an agriculture country. So I think people generally in Australia very much protect our farmers. We understand and appreciate the value. We've got farms in Australia that are the size of European countries like Belgium, and they're just one farm. So, but one of the biggest problems here at the moment is foreigners buying land here. We're not allowed to go to China or Japan or India and buy land there, but for some reason in Australia at the moment, we're selling a lot of our properties to Europe and to Chinese interests, and that's a bit of a worry at the moment.
Ooh, yes, that's a very interesting thing, isn't it? China using their monetary wealth. When we were in Africa one time, I think it was the Congo region, they're buying up everything, all the natural resources. They're starting to try to buy up all the real estate around the world so they can impose their imperialistic, totalitarian, authoritarian culture. I speak Chinese. I study Chinese, ancient Chinese. I was in East Asian Studies, Comparative Religion. So I mean, I have a lot of love for Chinese people,
Yeah.
but unfortunately, there's a lot of authoritarianism in their history, and it just leads to this collectivist, centralized, what we call political Satanist state, which then cripples,
Right.
human creativity, innovation, and the ability to prosper and live freely. And of course, you know, you're seeing now that in Australia, right? We were talking to the break about now what's happening in the public schools, the next generation of children who are being indoctrinated and having these federal programs being forced upon them.
Yeah, we've had a program developed or co-founded by a sworn Marxist, and it's called a Safe Skills Program, and it's supposed to, it's a radical anti-bullying program, but it really only involves itself with the gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender communities at school, and but that only relates to in Australia anyway. 1% of bullying is with the LGBT group. Bullying is more about how you look and sort of your social standards and if you're a slow learner. But all this money, there's millions of dollars being put into this program. It's very radical. Some of the bit like what you were saying before is it encourages children as young as primary school to do cross-dressing, teaches children gay techniques. Promotes unisex toilets, so they want to get rid of the male and female toilets, and it just has lots of very much gender and sexual themes. So it's in our public schools. Some of our states in Australia are a bit like America; they're conservative and they've done away with this. But we've got other Labor Party, which the Labor Party in Australia is like your Democrats. They're not only encouraging it, but they're funding it themselves. Obviously, not many private schools have this program in place, but it's a major issue here, and I just really worry that it's going to spread to other countries in the world.
Well, how in Australia, for example, is everybody mandated to go to public school? Can you do, for example, something like a homeschooling or alternative ways of educating your children?
Yeah, we've got a broad range of government and private schools, religious schools, Muslim schools, Catholic, Christian. But yeah, you can also certainly do homeschooling as well. And I think a lot of people of faith and values are doing that because of the sort of the way that the public education particularly is breaking down. So yeah, it certainly is becoming very much a popular option to homeschool as well.
Oh, that's a great thing to hear, because I know in Germany, for example, they've outlawed, it's now illegal to homeschool your children. You are forced to send them to state indoctrination camps where they'll be hypersexualized and taught how to masturbate and how to be unisex and transgender by the time they're 5 years old. I mean, this is complete mental illness that they're pushing on the children. And the whole purpose is to balkanize the public, get in this continual social constructionist fractionalization process where people are being fractured into more minority and more oppressed groups and more victimized groups, etc. And then, of course, that becomes the weaponized vehicle by which politicians are saying, that's why we need more state power. That's why we need more power. Vote for us, etc. Trust us, and we'll fight for your, quote, oppressed group. It's like the LGBTQ group continues to add new syllables, because there's every single person, every single little small group is saying, well, we're a minority. We're oppressed. We feel violated. Our rights are not, and then of course there's just this endless fractionalization, which then destroys the unity and cohesive identity of a nation. The nation then no longer becomes a nation; it becomes this fractionalized, balkanized, fighting at each other, ripping at each other's throats, trying to hate each other. State of affairs.
Especially, as I said, only 1% of bullying cases in our education system do relate to the LGBT community. I mean, so it's only a very small portion at the moment, yet so they're getting just so much funding, and it's just completely changing the whole way we do our education in Australia. So it's a major concern. I think there's a lot of alarm bells here, and a lot of the Christian groups and conservative groups are fighting back at the moment. So let's hope we can sort of change that direction.
That's such an important point, because you're talking about funding. In America, for example, a lot of the programs are funded by, of course, as you know, George Soros, one of the leftist billionaires that, of course, is in the whole international banking, cartel syndicate, group, and he funds radical leftist organizations. Literally, some of them domestic terrorist organizations. Now, Antifa, for example, is put on the FBI domestic terrorist list because they're literally attacking people, Christians who are just praying on the street, doing protests, and not even protests. I mean, they're just simply praying for, Berkeley, California, for example. And Antifa members are just coming in, beating them over the head with iron pipes, bike locks, and sticks, beating young, college student women with sticks. I mean, this is a man who has like imploded multiple nations. We saw this with the Ukraine crisis. I mean, pouring in all this money to take down Western civilization so he can bring in this entire, what they call neo-feudalistic socialist culture, and of course utilize the banking money supply to then ravage and take control of the resources, etc. In Australia, do you have such leftist billionaires that are also funding these kind of domestic terrorist units?
Yeah, Soros is very much involved in Australia. A few years ago, a very left-wing organisation called GitUp was sort of funded by Soros and by the trade union movement and left-wing politics, and it's having a major impact in Australia. It's certainly undermining the family and religious freedoms, and every time there's an issue, this GitUp, which is a Soros-funded organisation, is very much there, and it's causing great havoc in our communities as well. So not as bad as I'd say that's happening maybe in Europe and America, but we're certainly having those organisations come in. I mean, the UN is a major part of all this as well, some of the programs and policies that they promote in Australia.
Well, from my perspective as a pastor, it's so you can see Soros is filled with the spirit of evil, spirit of Satan, that he's trying to literally dominate the world and rule over the world as a false king, a false leader, false ruler, and using all his leverage and all the different things that he's done and all the criminal activity that he's done. I mean, even his own country of Hungary wants to ban him. Iceland already has a warrant for his arrest. Russia has a warrant for his arrest. The U.S. should put a warrant out for his arrest. I mean, he is a literal funder of domestic terrorist units in the U.S. We had a story just a couple of weeks ago about an Australian young man who was part of the Australian Antifa, who came out and exposed the fact that Soros wanted Antifa to become like ISIS, as radical and as violent as ISIS. And this guy was the leader. He's now left the organization because he said, I don't want to be a part of that.
Yeah, so there are countries, I think Macedonia is another country, who are just starting to ban anything to do with Soros. And I think we've just got to really keep an eye on him and other people. There's a whole bunch of those sort of, as you say, they're just sort of terrorists really, and just not in the same sense, but they could lead to that. We just don't know what they're doing behind the scenes either. I mean, how much are they involved in some of the more radical things happening around the world at the moment?
Well, it's so interesting because the program that you were talking about that they're now trying to push on Australia, I think they had a beta test here in America, especially in Chicago, where they were teaching 5-year-old children, about anal sex and masturbation. I mean, it's just insane. It's just so crazy, so unbelievably insane, over the top, in your face, just literally force feeding it into the population. And if you say anything, you were some kind of bigoted racist. I mean, it was just so unbelievable. Thank God people, parents got outraged at that, and they started, complaining about the fact that their children are being hypersexualized at such a young age. I mean, these are it's very interesting that with communism and the rise of socialism in different countries, when you look at the history, there's always the promise that they give the young people sexual freedom in exchange for political freedoms, eventually ending up enslaving the young people's class, and they've sold their soul basically for sex at a young age, and they throw off traditionalism. You see, for example, after Russia, or even China as well, when they went through their social revolution, you see, for example, marriage rates, divorce rates just skyrocket, abortion rates skyrocket. It becomes a nation that just turns their back on what they call traditionalism in a negative view, saying that the husband and wife system is old and outdated. We're modern, and we're gonna create the utopia on earth. I mean, how is it that each generation, these young people are getting caught up in the same patterns of failure of the past? They don't learn.
Yeah, it's yeah, as you say, it is. You know, you just feel that like communism was defeated in the late '80s, and you just feel that things are changing, and then we get humanism and these sort of movements starting up, which are just as bad. They're just got the same agendas, the same goal, and new generations forget what it was like with communism and the Cold War. So young people are attracted to these movements, and with our Safe Skills program, people were sent the links that were pretty well pornographic and teaching kids that it's okay to do oral sex and teaching girls.
Gosh.
Yeah, girls should line their chests so that they don't look like girls, that they can be happy to have flat chests and things like that. So, yeah, we don't seem to learn from past experiences past the moon.
I mean, that is literally abuse. That's literally physical abuse. If women are binding their chests, constricting all the blood flow to their breasts or to their bodies, you're literally harming the people. I mean, it's incredible. It's just the level of indoctrination. We become like this. It's become this polarized state of affairs where everybody is walking on eggshells for the fear that they may offend somebody. We heard I was listening to John Peterson, a clinical psychologist, I think out of Canada, and he was explaining how there was a classroom in a university, and a letter was written to him about it, and in the class there was a question asked, and then the professor asked, "Why aren't you all answering this question?" And one of the students rose up, answered saying, I'm scared. I'm going to be called racist or bigoted. And then he said, how many of you feel that way? And every student raised their hand. Because in some countries now, in, quote, the modern world, there's no more free speech. It's censored. It's called hate speech, and you can be put in jail for it.
Mm. Yeah, we just had a plebiscite in Australia where it was passed by 60% to 40% to allow gay marriage. So now it has to be legislated through our Senate and our House of Representatives. But during that debate, same sort of thing. Anybody who was pro-family, pro-marriage, as you say, they were attacked. And it's not that side of the fence that's causing the problems and fighting and bashing people. It was the other side. And anybody who just said anything against gay marriage, it was attacked, saying they were homophobes, and it was just unbelievable. But now that's going to get passed. Australia is now going through this massive debate that we need to protect freedom of religion, freedom of speech, because we've seen in America, we've seen in countries in Europe that people just don't want gay marriage, and they want to have it in a Catholic church. They want to, if you say no to a wedding reception centre or to make a cake, then you can be sued and taken to court. And people are saying, well, that will happen in Australia now, and I think it will.
I mean, that's the point. Marriage should not, it's my view that marriage should not be regulated by the state. I mean, the state has no business in marriage. It's not about being married under the state. Marriage is all about being married in the covenant with God, under God's authority. It's all about marriage. Marriage is not something that the state can regulate. And when they get involved in it and they're forcing pastors to have to marry gay couples, even if it's against Christianity. I mean, look, Christians on average don't want to throw gay people off roofs because they believe in grace and God's mercy and God's forgiveness once a sinner repents. Of course, Christianity sees homosexuality and that kind of thing as licentious behavior and abomination before God, but they don't want to just murder all the gays. There's still an active free will element that is part of Christian theology that is critical for the person to find God and to then able to have a relationship with Christ. How is it that the homosexual movement, the homosexual political movement, there's a beautiful book called The Pink Swastika, which outlines the actual Nazi roots of the LGBTQ movement in America. The top, the main thinkers for the LGBTQ movement or the homosexual political agenda movement was actually connected to the Nazi first homosexual pro-gay organization started out in Nazi Germany, which then imported itself to Chicago, and from Chicago then comes the homosexual movement, the leaders, all this kind of thing. But it's actually connected to the swastika. Anyways, I digress. They were talking about how is it that the homosexual movement is allying with something like radical Sharia law Islam, which it's suicidal for them, because if Islam takes over and becomes a dominant religion and culture, all the gays are dead.
Yeah, we have that same situation in Australia whenever there's a sort of rallies and people come out pro-Islam and all that sort of thing, and we have many of the people from the gay communities marching. Yet it's just ridiculous. As you just said, they're going to be the first ones targeted. And so are women. The feminists and the women groups are the same. Just you can't do a thing about Sharia law and sort of. They're just silent on child brides, on female sort of mutilation and all those sort of things. But you get up and say you're pro-family or you want to support Christmas and things like that, they'll just knock you down straight away. It's just bloody ridiculous.
I mean, the political left they're in a state of absolute insanity. Because on the one hand, they're saying that they want to be the most tolerant thing, yet they're embracing the most intolerant civilization on earth, which is, Sharia law. It's one of the most intolerant, misogynistic civilizations and ideologies on the planet, and it's a political ideology. It's unbelievable that, for the LGBT community, they should be trying to ally with the Christians to keep the Sharia law at bay instead of saying, let them pour in, let them pour in. What is with them? It's like a suicide cult.
Yeah, it's just really bizarre. It just doesn't make any sense at all. But as you just said, they're the ones that are going to be persecuted the most. Yet they're the ones that support these sort of movements at the moment. I can't make any sense of it.
I mean, isn't it? I mean, this morning we were talking about the left as a power cult, a power mongering cult. And this is, of course, when you have the satanic prince Saul Alinsky, and his modalities of ends justify the means, and do anything which works. I mean, it's anything for power, anything for, and of course they sell it to the young people. Oh, we have to take power because if we don't, then the racist white supremacists and the racist, bigoted, homophobes are going to take power. Meanwhile, they're allying with the most homophobic, the most radically misogynistic, the most oppressive to women ideologies. It's just unbelievable. And for me, this is like a power cult. They'll ally with anything for temporary power. It's like the suicidal psychopathic maniac who will just want to, kill the golden egg, the golden goose that lays the golden eggs, just for the taste of duck that night, even though he'll go starving in the next, for the next 20 years.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. It's incredible. In America, you have all these kind of issues. In Australia, I heard, however, they are still pushing to let the migrants from these very dangerous, unknown areas to just pour into Australia. Is there anything done? Is the Conservative Party trying to stand up for Australia's own identity and borders?
Yeah, we've done we've got very much closed borders in Australia. Unlike America, of course, we're a large island, so we are isolated. But under the last Labor government, like your Democrats, they allowed 50,000 people to cross over from Indonesia on boats, and many of them from countries that really are not suitable, like from Turkey and Sri Lanka and countries that don't have war at the moment. So once the Conservatives got re-elected, the Liberal Nationals, we stopped that. We haven't had a boat come to Australia now for 5 or 6 years. We've got a whole bunch of them living in New Guinea in sort of camps. And unfortunately, that's where President Trump's agreed to take a lot of them, which we were quite surprised by. But no, we're very careful at the moment. I mean, we do have large immigration, but certainly unlike Europe at the moment or America with the Mexican border, we're very much, pretty well nobody comes into Australia unless they've got the paperwork, which is making it a lot safer. We still have local-born terrorism. Our terrorism are mainly from young Islamic people born in Australia. They're not people coming here. They're kids that are born here, which is very scary.
And of course, Australia does not have a Second Amendment. How hard is it to get firearms for people's self-defense, and how hard is it for women to get to be able to carry a firearm, to protect themselves?
Yeah, we're very sort of draconian on that. We had a major massacre in Tasmania, and it was Conservatives actually, which is quite interesting. John Howard at the time brought in massive new gun laws, and we don't have that gun culture, I guess, as you do in America. It's a bit like Europe, but I think I find the laws quite balanced. I think people shooters and hunters and farmers can have the guns. We don't really have those rapid fire guns in Australia, but women, handguns aren't that popular in Australia. I mean, but then again, our murder rates is probably nothing compared to the US and other countries as well. So it's an ongoing battle as well. We have a new political party in Australia, which is based around the gun clubs and that, so they're doing all right. But a lot of people are still upset that we don't have more liberal laws, but others are saying, well, we need to tighten them up. So it's also a major argument happening in Australia at the moment.
Well, it's interesting because
I think quite often the the Democrats and that will quote Australia as a gun laws because of what our Prime Minister did back in the 80s when he certainly stiffened up the laws greatly.
Right, there was a confiscation, right? There was a registration then confiscation in Australia.
Yeah, we have them every now and then. They had one very much there, and we just had another one recently where they have you can just take your guns in and deposit them with the police. And we get thousands of people. I think the first one they did, they had tens of thousands of guns. But they're the honest people. If you're a criminal, if you're a bikie, if you're a terrorist, you're not going to take your gun in and lodge it with the police, are you? You're going to,
of course not,
hide that. So it's just all the honest people that gave their guns away, and the people that really are causing the problems have held on to their guns.
Well, it's interesting. In the U.S., Australia's very often cited as one of the cases, et cetera, that the U.S. should follow. That's the leftists say right here. But of course, when you see the mass shooting attacks, which statistically are a zero in terms of actual homicides in America, but when you look at the mass shootings, every single one, since the 1960s, every single one, there's been over 60 of them, every single one minus, I think, 4 of them were in a gun-free zone. So the vast majority are in places where the criminals know that the people will be disarmed. Now, when the criminals know that the people are armed, like there was one school that allowed their students, if they were legally permitted to carry a firearm and trained to carry a firearm, they said, well, we don't have any gun laws on that. You can carry if you want. I mean, if you're legally able to carry in the state. And it was a private university, and there was a attempted mass murder there. But one of the students who was legally trained and legally permitted to carry with a permit was able to stop that attacker. And so you have the mass shootings. These criminals are cowards. These people are trying to create mass damage without any damage to themselves. And of course, running into these gun-free zones, so to speak, just gives them free rein to just massacre innocent bystanders and people who are doing nothing to them. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I think it's a very different. As I said, I think we're very much more the European nature here. We've never really had a very strong gun culture, but I can see that. I mean, in America, that if you look at the amount of people that are murdered from guns each year, as you say, it's domestic, it's street gangs, it's crime related, and as you're saying, people really jump on the fact of these mass murders, but it's not the major problem in America. And I think anybody in America would say it would be a good idea to make licenses a bit harder, that people with mental illnesses or social issues should be condemned and not allowed to have them. But I think they've got to get those sort of rules in place, just not impact on the innocent people that want to have a gun.
Yeah, what's so interesting is that this is, of course, we have a lot of already existing laws that make it hard for legally law-abiding citizens to legally even get a firearm. But of course, there's many states that, of course, have more Americana laws which allow self-defense to be, more available to people. But again, even with the whole thing that they were trying to push with the medical tyranny and trying to say that, we have certain people that may be psychologically, damaged or psychologically, clinically, this or that. Well, they were putting things in the DSM that were saying that if you have a phobia, that if you have a criticism of the government, of a federal bureaucracy, that you actually have a psychological illness. This is in Diagnostic Statistical Manual number 6. And that was just released by the American Association of Clinical Psychologists. And they were saying that literally speaking out against power and the federal government can be seen as a clinical disease. And if that's the case, then it's almost anybody who is a dissenting voice out there who can be targeted legally and is otherwise legally law-abiding citizen who can literally they can use the trope of clinical psychology to say, well, that person shouldn't be able to have a Second Amendment and or human rights to defend themselves. And so this is the big danger, of course, letting the, quote, establishment determine what is clinical sickness and clinical health. And they are essentially able to censor then people who have opposing views.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, very good point. It's a sneaky way of undermining the people's rights to have a gun, isn't it? If you do bring in those sort of rules, then they can do so much damage. They can pretty well. I don't think there's too many of us around there that are completely normal anyway. So I think they could really do a lot of damage there, as you say, just by saying that everybody's not really sensible or have political opinions. And it's quite a very sneaky way of destroying that people's ownerships of having those guns.
Well, it's all under the name of science, even though leftists have now become the most unscientific people on the planet. Well, we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back with more with Mr. Lemon from Australia. Stay with us, folks.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Joby Gorgas with Magnum Research. I'm here to tell you a little bit about our new L5 and 44 mag. This is our 5-inch model, lightweight model. It's got an aluminum grip frame, shaving down the weight so that we can get it under 50 ounces so that it's New York legal. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how to properly hold the L5 for function. When shooting a Desert Eagle, you want to make sure that your dominant arm is locked out, pushing back into the back of the grip. Your secondary hand is holding around the front of the grip to keep the muzzle flip down. This gives you a good firm hold for proper cycling. We got to remember that the Desert Eagle is a gas-operated rotating bolt semi-automatic pistol, not unlike an AR system. I also want to talk to you about the stance for shooting the Desert Eagle. When shooting the Desert Eagle, you need a good firm base. So you want to step into your direction, get that arm locked, that support hand on, and lean forward into it so that you can handle that recoil. Hi, I'm Joe.
Magnum Research. And Auto Ordnance, the Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology, it's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry, Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
And we are back. Welcome back to the King's Report. Second game reporting live from the Chenigung studios to all the kings and queens of the Kingdom of God. Good morning. It is a beautiful day in these parts of Pennsylvania. We are talking with Mr. Lemon from Australia. And we are, of course, during the break, we're discussing the relations between Australia and the U.S. Mr. Lemon, can you fill us in on that?
Yeah, I think, well, America and Australia have been very strong allies. I mean, ever since really World War One, I think Australia is probably one of the only countries in the world that has been beside America in all the conflicts right through the Second World War, Korea, Vietnam, and Iraq, and all these other sort of battles we've been having. So yeah, we're very close. I think it doesn't matter what side of politics in Australia they are, very pro-America, and I think a lot of us feel very sorry for America because everyone calls them the world's police. But I mean, people love to have a go at America and put America down. But at the same time, when America isn't involved and they're not doing something, they put them down as well. So I think many of us in Australia, many of us recognise that, and it's not an easy position. But as I said, I think we couldn't be close at the moment. We've had a number of your presidents speak in our parliament in Australia and vice versa. So very good relationships. China is having an impact on that. It's America's our natural ally. It's our sort of, but at the same time, China's becoming Australia's business ally because we do more trade, we do more business with China, and China has a lot of power. In Australia and the Pacific Islands nearby, they're taking over many of the islands and putting lots of money into it, so winning their support that way. So that's a worry as well. And I think China is also in Australia. We've got a lot of sort of free Chinese, as I call them, though, from Taiwan, Singapore, Hong Kong here, but we're getting more and more Chinese students from Red China, the mainland, and the government's pretty well making them all spies for China. They're here, and if they do the wrong thing, they go back and they're in big trouble in their homeland. But while they're here, they're really all very subservient to Red China. And the government's seeing that as well, that they're causing a lot of problems on our university campuses because of the political agenda that they're sort of pushing whilst in Australia.
Wow. Now, you brought up China because China is absolutely an imperialistic, authoritarian, collectivist, state that's right on the brink of such incredible economic bubbles that are about to burst, shattering their economy. And you have them, for example, in Breitbart, there's a article written on the 6 things you should know about China's One Belt Road program. This is the One Belt, One Road, OBOR project, consisting of the Silk Road Economic Belt, a land route to Europe, and the 21st century Maritime Silk Road, a sea route cutting from the Philippines to the Mediterranean, is a sprawling bureaucratic monstrosity the Chinese Communist Party asserts will create a better connected, wealthier global economy. The Belt and Road Initiative, as it's sometimes also called, requires China to invest heavily in infrastructure and development across the 3 continents to facilitate trade for China. Here's the map that they're showing, and our viewers can see it right now. The routes of China proposed Belt and Road Initiative, it will stretch all the way from Europe into the northern part of China, all the way down to Southeast Asia, will stretch through the Indian Ocean to South Asia, through the Indian Ocean, all the way up through Africa, and back to Europe and the South Pacific Ocean out there. It's just a massive, sprawling belt. I'm just going to read some of the subsections here. One Belt, One Road is mercantilism on a global scale. It's a way that China is to dominate world trade by building and controlling a network of roads, pipelines, railways, ports, and power plants to deliver raw materials to China and finished goods to the rest of the world. It's a superhighway for Chinese economic dominance. It's also a bailout for China's economy. Economic growth has been slowing within China for years, putting more and more pressure on China's government-controlled financial sector to fund projects that are increasingly uneconomical. The country is producing far more steel, cement, and machinery than it can possibly use. So China has built cities in which no one lives, office towers in which no one works, and railroads that literally go nowhere in an effort to keep its population employed. The massive infrastructure projects of OBOR are an extension of this. They provide the short-term demand for China's production, starving off what many thought would be an inevitable economic reckoning and collapse. Also, it's going to turn everybody Chinese. Look at this video, folks. For our viewers who are watching on TV right now, look at this video where everybody is becoming Chinese. White, black, Asian, Indian. Everybody is now Chinese. It's cool to be Chinese and to be ruled over by totalitarian organ harvesters. There you go. Oh my goodness. This is exploitation of children for propaganda, okay? Oh my gosh, the future's coming now and it will be China. Oh my gosh, this is unbelievably militarized, child exploitation propaganda. Getting these kids from all different races who don't know yet how to tie their shoelaces, and getting them to be involved in this cold, blooded, attempt to impose imperialism and total socialist domination over the world. Incredible. Look at that. They have European kids in their little propaganda video. Hey, the Belt and the Road is the future, they say. Share the goodness now and send all things to China. Oh my gosh. They even got a little rap in there to make the young kids who grew up on video games and public school to turn off their proper amygdala function and just become indoctrinated. There you go. The future is coming now, they say. Wow, look how happy all the kids are. China's going to dominate the world and make them all into slaves. So happy, so trendy, so liberal. There you go. Also, another subheading, it could significantly hurt India. The China Daily Map shows India as a pivotal geographical location for the Silk Road economic belt. Any major development to get to either Africa or Central Asia requires India's input. It could devastate India's economy. Also, much of the maritime Silk Road is illegal. There you go. It's also illegal. China claims water in the South China Sea with the exclusive economic zones of Vietnam, Malaysia, Philippines, Brunei, Taiwan, and the waters of Natuna Island, Indonesia, etc. So they're just claiming up more maritime land. OBOR is China's manifest destiny. As the diplomat has noted, the territory covered by OBOR includes more than 2/3 of the world's population and more than 1/3 of global economic output, and could involve Chinese investments that total up to $4 trillion. It includes territories like Nepal, Afghanistan, Central Asian states, etc., basically making all these nations into part of China. Wow. Mr. Lemon, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, firstly, I'm happy to say Australia isn't signing on at this stage anyway. I think it's quite hypocritical of China when they're saying they want to have the Silk Road and open the world up, but they're closing down the South China Sea. So it just seems very hypocritical. China also has more border disputes with countries in the world than any other country in the world. So they're bullying of the Philippines and Vietnam, Indonesia. So I think countries are very wary of what they're trying to do. It might just be a pipe dream, but I think until they can show that they can be a better neighbour and do the right thing by that region, I don't think too many people will be too excited. And India has major concerns with China of all countries. So, yeah, I just think at the moment it's something that's a bit of a pipe dream, but they've got to learn to be better neighbours before they go down this track.
Well, it's amazing because China is well known for its relocation programs, which are essentially demographic, population takeovers of different places like Tibet. They just move in, they keep the nation poor and impoverished so they can brainwash the population and keep education levels low, IQ levels low, just create this whole slave class of people who don't think for themselves and are indoctrinated and are bullied and punished if they go against the state party line. And then they send these masses and hordes of people, of whom which they threaten and they murder and they organ harvest just to keep them in line. And then they'll send them to different areas to just take it over, bring in the Han Chinese authoritarian culture. Not saying that all Chinese people are bad. Of course, there's many beautiful Chinese people. Awesome. I have a lot of Chinese friends that I know. But just the cultural authoritative elite class, which really rules the political system of China, they're now trying to spread that, sending their people to all these different areas to literally buy land, take over culturally, and then that, of course, becomes a extension of the Chinese empire, almost a colonial extension done by demographic relocation. And then they're in their mind, they're expanding Tang Dynasty, 9th century China to the rest of the world, while their oligarchs and their rulers are literally cackling and perching on top of nation states, seeing them become, part of China. They claim, for example, in public schools that Korea is part of China.
Yeah. Yeah, it's as you say, it's not the people, it's the elitist communists, and who also just happen to be the richest people in China as well, which I can never work that out. But,
Right.
but yeah, their influences, they're having a lot of influence in the Pacific Islands, and I think it's even very worrying that the new government in the Philippines is saying that China's the place to deal with, and they've given up on America after all these years of what America's done to the Philippines. So China is doing it this way. They got the financial means and that they can go into these sort of countries and just win them by doing it, that sort of thing. But I just, as I said, they're very elitist. They've still got their doctrines, and we've just got to be very careful. I think America has been a little bit weak on some of this foreign policy over the Obama years.
Yes.
And maybe
yes.
even in the Bush years at the end as well. So
yes.
At least Trump is starting to say, well, look, we've got an important role to play in the Asia Pacific, in the Indian Ocean area. So I feel that's very good, like what's happening in North Korea as well, is that suddenly America is engaged. They're interested in what's happening in that part of the world. Australia is certainly not putting up with these bans on the South China Sea, and we'll be joining America at different times to be sending our battleships right past their bases there. So we're not going to be intimidated, and we can't be. And I think that's a good thing that's happening in America at the moment.
Well, we're proud of President Trump. He just got back from his Asia trip. And of course, he's, for the first time, actually standing up for American, workers and American, companies, and saying, hey, we got to be able to compete fairly here. It's not fair that the U.S. was under UN sanctions and basically had a 35% corporate tax rate, where China had a 15%. It's just not able to compete on a fair playing field, and we got to just change this. And of course, he's trying to push for these changes, et cetera, in the U.S. And of course, how he's trying to deal with China and say, hey, you guys gotta, you can't just infringe on people's sovereignty here. China, if you do the purchasing power analysis, which, does a calculation on military spending based on the use of Chinese labor, which is much cheaper in China compared to the West. So on that purchasing parity analysis, China is spending more on military expansion. It's been more on its military than even the United States under the Obama administration. And it's creating such a powerful military so that if any of these nations do question the things that it all of a sudden just claims as its own, it has literally military and nuclear power sitting behind those claims. And so, of course, that's a grave danger when this is an authoritarian, communist dictatorship which murders and imprisons people for being Christian and Falun Gong members for practicing, yoga and meditation in public parks, and they get organ harvested. I mean, this is not a good human rights or a moral high ground by which to lead the world.
Yeah, it's even interesting with Vietnam, America, and Australia's, of all countries, you would think we'd still have very cool relationships with Vietnam, but Vietnam woke up many decades ago about how, the sort of position that China's up to. So we're even building better relationships with Vietnam because of what's happening in China. So I think it's the only way to stall or to stop China in some of their sort of what they're doing is if most of the countries around there do stick together and stay united. So I think China will soon see that they just can't be at war with everybody. So hopefully that will work.
Well, we're so thankful, Mr. Lemon, for having you on today and hearing your breakdown, especially what is happening in Asia and Australia and the other side of the globe that we're situated from. But a pleasure to have you. Thank you for your insight and your breakdown of so many issues that are coming. Thank you for your warning to America of what may potentially be coming on in different tidal waves in terms of culturally, and what we have to watch out for. Always watch out for how our children are under attack, our families are under attack, marriage is under attack, the conventional family and fathers are under attack, and we have to stand up as human beings to say no, because what they're trying to replace that with is pedophile cults, is Hollywood sex culture, is free sex culture, which implodes and destroys morality, which then destroys civilization. They're trying to replace it with something so evil and wicked and ugly instead of, and that's why it makes them angry when you have a powerful family. It makes them angry when you have a beautiful, loving relationship with your wife and spouse and you have a powerful marriage. It just makes them so angry. They're just so hateful of things that are actually beautiful in the eyes of God. So we are so grateful that you are sending out the warning. The whole world needs to see this. We'd love to have you on again, Mr. Lemon. Thank you so much for joining us today. And of course, thank you all for joining us this beautiful morning. Hey, take time to go out in God's beautiful creation. It is such a gorgeous day. I'm ready to run out right now. But we thank you all for joining us.
Sorry,
thank you, Mr. Lemon.
Before I go, love your passion, and I know your father will be very proud of you because you're very much a very similar man to him with your beliefs and as a man. So well done, and it's been a real honour to speak to you tonight.
Oh, honor is all mine. Thank you, Mr. Lemon. Is there any way people can get in touch with you or your websites? Give us some of your websites if you have.
I don't have a personal website. I'm obviously through Facebook, and your people there know those connections. So if anybody would like to contact me, just talk to your people there in your office, and I'm happy to to talk to them and to connect and network with this. Like-minded people have really got to stick together if we're going to have a victory.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Thank you, Mr. Lennon. Thank you so much.
God
Great to
bless.
meet you. Great
All
to
right.
see you. Thank you so much. All right, folks.
Okay,
We'll
bye-bye.
see you tomorrow, 5 a.m. with Tim, the Agent Elder. God bless, Godspeed, and may His kingdom come.
Your love is greater, your love is stronger, your love will